Imagine passing a massive, highly controversial law that completely reworks how the internet operates for an entire country, only to have the whole thing fall apart because you finally decided to ask a couple of teenagers how they actually use their phones. Like, that is exactly what just happened in the United Kingdom, and the absolute irony of the situation is honestly some of the funniest political stuff I have ever seen. So, for months, the UK government has been loudly preparing to launch this massive, you could say, crusade against everyday privacy tools, specifically targeting VPNs as part of their aggressive new online safety laws. Like the politicians, well, they were completely convinced that VPNs were this massive, sinister loophole that millions of kids were using to bypass the new mandatory age checks and social media curfews that they were trying to force onto the public. Like, they basically painted these standard privacy apps as public enemy number one, acting like anyone who wanted to browse the internet privately was supposedly trying to break the law and bypass the system. So, in order to justify a complete crackdown and potential ban on these tools for young people, well, the UK government, they pretty much commissioned a massive official study to prove their point and gather the undeniable evidence they needed to start restricting access. But here is where the entire master plan just kind of hit a wall, because instead of proving that VPNs were a massive threat to online safety, well, the government's own highly funded research will just completely dismantled their entire argument in front of like the whole world, forcing them to do one of the most embarrassing and just immediately public U-turns in recent internet history. So it is a perfect, undeniable example of what happens when out-of-touch lawmakers, they try to regulate technology that they just completely do not understand, only to have reality snap back and completely break their narrative. So to really understand why this backfire is so incredibly satisfying, you have to look at the sheer scale of what the government was actually trying to build here. So the UK, they have been pushing forward with this massive legislative package that is designed to heavily restrict how younger people actually access the internet and use social media platforms. Like, we are talking about things like sweeping, highly intrusive new rules that just include mandatory age verification checkpoints, and also just even bizarre government mandated social media curfews that would just like quite literally mute notifications and just limit access between midnight and 6 a.m. Like, in their minds, the only way to successfully enforce this digital lockdown was to force every single user to actually prove their identity and age before they could even access anything. But there was one massive glaring problem standing in their way, like the basic existence of privacy tools. Like, lawmakers quickly realized that if a teenager could just fire up like something like a simple app that hides their location and just encrypts their web traffic, well, the entire whole age verification plan that they were building would kind of become completely useless. So the narrative kind of shifted, and politicians started floating the idea of heavily restricting, age gating, or just banning VPNs entirely to close the supposed loophole. Like, they genuinely believed that they could just legislate away basic digital privacy, ignoring the massive coalition of cybersecurity experts, tech companies, and also just like advocates who were screaming at them that breaking encryption tools just would create like a massive security disaster. Like, the government was just totally convinced that they were sitting on a ticking time bomb of youth defiance, and they just needed the official data from their research to give them the green light to drop the hammer on the open internet. But the data they got back was just so completely opposite to what they expected. It just honestly feels like this is something straight out like a comedy show. So pretty much the UK's whole Department of Science or whatever, they ran a massive survey involving over 2,000 kids between the ages of 11 and 17, fully expecting to uncover this massive underground network of teenagers using things like VPNs and encryption to bypass the government's new regulations. But instead, the actual numbers, they just completely like destroyed the political narrative. Like, the survey revealed that only around 7% of children were actually using like a VPN to reach like age restricted stuff. So how are the vast majority of kids getting past these supposedly ironclad age gates? They were literally just like lying. Like, nearly half of the teenagers who bypassed the check, literally half of them didn't even have to scan their ID. They just typed in like a fake birthday on the website, and boom, it worked. And it kind of just proved that the government's highly sophisticated tracking fears were a total joke. Like, they did not need complex network routing tools to break the system. They just used the exact same basic like drop down menu trick that everyone has been using since like the dawn of time. Like even better, the researchers found that the teenagers who actually did use VPNs were doing it for the exact right reasons. Like a massive 81% of those VPN users actually stated that using a privacy tool made them feel safer online. And the primary motivation for actually using a VPN was simply to protect their personal data and keep their like everyday browsing habits private. Like the government just spent all this time and money trying to prove that privacy apps were dangerous, only to kind of prove that the younger generation actually understands like digital security significantly better than the politicians who are trying to regulate them. The immediate aftermath of the report being published was an absolute, I would say, disaster for people who had been pushing for the ban. Like, faced with their own, like, undeniable data proving that the entire theory was just completely wrong, well, the UK government had absolutely no choice but to wave the white flag and just kind of surrender. Like, the whole situation peaked when pretty much the online safety minister was kind of forced to go on live television on BBC and kind of admit defeat, just stating flat out that they had decided not to limit VPNs for now anyway, since he made clear that the government would actually keep reviewing the decision. Like the technology secretary, they followed up with a written statement that just kind of walked back months of aggressive rhetoric, suddenly confirming that VPNs actually have totally legitimate privacy and security uses. Like it was incredibly fast and just kind of collapse of a terrible policy. Like this massive U-turn was, you could say, a victory for like the internet, specifically for like the coalition of digital right groups and also just companies like Proton, VPN companies, all that, who have been fighting this battle for like months. Like these privacy advocates had been warning the government over and over again that trying to put an age gate on a VPN would not actually protect anyone, but just instead create a massive like gapping like cybersecurity nightmare by forcing people to hand over highly sensitive identification data just to use like a security tool. And because the open source community like refused to back down, and also because government's own research just backfired, well, the state was forced to kind of shelve their digital checkpoint, at least for the time being. Like the burden has been shifted away from breaking privacy tools and dumped right back onto the massive social media platforms, forcing the actual tech giants to figure out how to manage their own users instead of just punishing the entire country for wanting basic digital privacy. Ultimately, the collapse, for now at least, of the UK's VPN crackdown is one of the most satisfying like examples of just control failing when it meets like the reality of the open web. Like it perfectly highlights the absolute delusion of lawmakers who honestly believe that they can just outlaw fundamental internet infrastructure just without understanding how any of it actually works. Like the fact that they were just so aggressively like focused on dismantling vital encryption tools, only to be like humbled by like the revelation that kids were actually using VPNs mostly to protect themselves, is just a lesson that every single internet regulator just needs to study. Like the digital privacy space is not some sort of like niche corner of the internet, I would say. Like it is just a fundamental like requirement for safely navigating like the modern internet, and also the overwhelming like pushback from both cybersecurity experts and also just like everyday people prove that people will not simply just like surrender their right to security just because a politician uses some crazy rhetoric. Like this entire like arc, you could say, proves that when you push back against bad legislation with actual facts, data, and organized resistance, well, the system can actually be forced to correct itself. So yeah, that's the first video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and yeah, I will see you next time.